Let's go! When it comes to recruiting, you should trust Ed Orgeron. And when it comes to the class of 2022, there is one guy that I think they should offer right now, like right now. But today, I'm going to hopefully change your minds regarding this class because there's so many good players, especially in the state of Louisiana. But there are some outside factors that are affecting LSU, and I think one person is going to help with it more than we think. So go on ahead, subscribe to the channel, like this video, let's get to it. So here's the good thing. You look at last year, LSU's top two targets in the state of Louisiana. Both of them were 5 stars. And there was a bit of a sweat with Mason Smith and Sage Ryan, which is fine. Announce whenever you want to announce where you're going. The good news, though, for this class is the 2022 top 2 players, and to me, they are on a different level than everyone else in this class, Walker Howard and Will Campbell. Walker Howard because he plays the most important position in all of football, and I do believe he really is special. And Will Campbell, who is a very good offensive tackle. But this year, it is more important that LSU hammer the offensive line position. We've done plenty of videos on this very thing. The offensive line recruiting hasn't been up to par, and part of that is the state of Louisiana hasn't produced a lot of good offensive linemen in recent years. So that's why Will Campbell was so important. There is a guy by the name of Emory Jones at a Catholic High in Baton Rouge who I do think will eventually commit to LSU. And then there are some other players like Bo Bordelon and Lucas Taylor who have already committed. And you look here, and that's not highly rated players, but still huge positions of need. So if Emory Jones commits, you already have 4 offensive linemen, which would be more offensive linemen in this class than any class that you've had in recent years. So that is taken care of for now. What I want you to do, though, is take a deep breath, because what has changed in college football has only been expounded by LSU's own wrongdoing. College football slots, meaning your roster spot, has become more valuable because of this extra pandemic year. So obviously, if you are familiar with the state of college football right now, well, if you were a senior, you could come back for one more season. This past year did not count against your eligibility. Now, while it is true that if a senior decided to come back, their scholarship doesn't count against the total number of 85 scholarships, it still does cause a logjam, because if that said senior comes back and a kid doesn't get playing time that year, that kid enters the transfer portal. So there's going to be more kids that enter the transfer portal when this transfer portal is already loaded up. And when I mean loaded up, I mean there's really no room whatsoever. Take a look at this tweet from Keith Krabowski. Now, full disclosure, I've never heard of this guy before today, but look at these numbers. Most kids that enter the transfer portal haven't found a home yet. Well, that means that there's a lot of talented players in that portal, and there's just not a lot of slots, right? Well, no. A good number of these kids, according to Ross Dellinger, they are walk-ons, so they're kids that LSU wouldn't be after. And a lot of kids that transfer from Power 5 schools end up going to a non-Power 5 school anyway. However, what we do know about transfers is that they immediately play and help, especially at LSU. So last year, the best linebacker, your starting center, immediate transfer portal needs. The year before, well, your quarterback and tight end, Joe Burrow and Thad Moss, both transfers, both with immediate impact when they came to LSU. And this past year, LSU only has one transfer in Mike Jones, who, by all accounts, is going to start next season. So it's important to keep slots open for transfers because they have turned out to be very fruitful for LSU. So we know this about the portal, right? Well, this is a very interesting nugget. LSU's scholarship total for 2021 is only at 81, and for 2022, it's going to be at 77 because of off-the-field self-imposed infractions, and there could be more of those. But for now, what we do know is what we know. Now, LSU's going to have more than 81 scholarship players because, as we mentioned already, the seniors, the Glenn Logans, the Liam Shanahans, their scholarships don't count against them because of this pandemic year. However, there is a weird dynamic with LSU because their numbers were already so low to begin with. So losing 4 scholarships in theory is not that big of a deal. Or is it? The reason why it's tough to really say is because there's so many variables. That's why I said that this is going to be very vague. What I'm about to say is going to be very vague. But 2 opposite extremes could potentially happen to LSU. Yes, their numbers are severely low. And as you see here, I pulled up. But this piece from Shea Dixon was back in December, letting you know that LSU's current scholarship number then was at 66. Now, that doesn't include the 24 signees that they have now. But there have been more players that have transferred and left since that. So that number is even lower than that. So here's the funny thing about the 81 scholarship number. If you bring in a new recruit, well, that new recruit is likely not only going to be there for 1 year. You got to also factor in 2022, where you're only going to be able to keep 77 guys around. So while the roster number looks to be low, got to remember, you can only have 77 in that year. So there's going to be a lot of roster management. I really do think that's why LSU really needed to get somebody like Austin Thomas, who I think that is going to be his number 1 role. And there's going to be some very difficult decisions Ed Orgeron's going to make. And remember, this is what Ed Orgeron loves to do. This is recruiting, roster management, player building. This is what he's known for. And that leads me to this outside-the-box thought. What we've learned so far in recruiting is that, well, it's kind of hard to predict how good a player is going to be. But what we do know is transfer portal players do turn out to work out pretty well for LSU. You know, well, you get it. They have some college experience. They come in ready to play. If there are going to be more players that enter the portal, if you do believe more players are still going to enter the portal anyway, even though it's so crowded now, in theory, that means that more talented guys are going to be there for you to choose from, which means that more than likely they're going to come in and only play for a year or 2 years, which makes that a little bit easier to manage. Because those slots are so valuable, you do have a guy that comes in and helps you right away. So that's why you need to keep in mind that this year is going to be so radically different, and it is expounded because of the off-the-field infractions. That's why LSU, in theory, could lose even more scholarship guys, like they did this year to the portal or people just quitting or off-the-field issues or the draft. We just don't know. So that's why this is so complicated to break down. And it's random. A lot of this is random. So maybe LSU spends less time recruiting and more so focusing on other issues with the team, such as schematic issues and game management, which we'll do more videos on throughout this offseason. Those things are oftentimes just as important as recruiting, especially if you make a lot of mistakes, which LSU did in those departments this past season. With the new coaching staff, the communication and the actual coaching aspect outside of the recruiting aspect is going to be so paramount for this season. Now, I promised you one kid that I think LSU should offer right now, and I really do think this kid is really good. So Jordan Allen is a kid I like a lot at a Lafayette Christian Academy where he played alongside Sage Ryan. And I know LSU's already had 3 corners committed. They're definitely going to get at least another year out of Elias Ricks. And you have some young talent in Demarius McGee, Dwight McClothern, Jay Ward. Lots of youth there. Cordell Flott. But you can never have enough corners. Remember, college football is only spreading out even wider, so it is so important to have as many guys who can cover all these wide receivers. The more corners you have, the better. Look, historically, name a great transfer corner LSU's had. It's not a position that is, a very fruitful position in the portal, even though there is a really good corner out of West Virginia currently in the portal, but still, it's just few and far between to get a really good corner. So that's why I think LSU should offer Jordan Allen, and he himself is a good player. I hope you enjoyed this video today. Let me know what you think down below in the comment section. It is Power Hour LSU. Boom! What are we doing? I think we're doing pork chops tonight.